All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Before we get started, let's introduce everyone in this meeting. I'm Sandy Brock. When I call your name, please confirm that you can hear me by verifying that you are present. Starting with the commissioners. Travis,
I'm here.
thank you. Jonathan,
Present.
thank you. And Emily,
I'm here.
thank you very much. And Patrick is not here tonight. We'll move on to staff. Leah,
I'm here.
thank you. Jan,
Present.
thank you. All right, this open meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely via Zoom pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order, as most recently extended on March 29th, 2023. Access information for the public has been provided on the town website. This meeting is being recorded. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. This is done on the phone by pressing *6. As chair, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please note that you will not have screen sharing privileges, but staff can display any visuals per your cue. During periods of public comment, participants must use the raise hand icon in the Zoom menu bar to indicate they would like to speak. This is done on the phone by pressing *9 and then *6 to unmute when you are called upon. Participants who raise their hand will be recognized one at a time and will be promoted to speak. Finally, each vote will be taken, each vote taken will be conducted by a roll call vote. As a reminder, the Commission is concerned with state and town wetlands and stormwater regulations. Concerns outside this purview need to be addressed to the appropriate boards. For example, road conditions must be addressed with the select board and traffic concerns must be addressed with the planning board. All right, so that is our opening. So Leah, just kind of maybe get through a couple of action items to give folks have continuance maybe a chance to show up.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Action items. Start at the top or?
Yeah,
any-
sounds good.
Okay. All right. So the April 23rd, 2024 meeting minutes. I will go around to the commission to see if anyone has any comments or recommendations on it. So meeting minutes, April 23rd. Jonathan, anything?
No comments.
Emily,
No comments.
and Travis.
No comments.
All right, I also have no comments. Can I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll move to accept the minutes from April 23rd.
And do I have a
Second.
second? Thank you. A motion, a second. Roll call vote. Travis,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. Okay, next up is certificate of compliance for 98 Worcester Street. Leah, want to give us an update?
Sure. So they are before us now for their other project, off of Doris Drive. This was their, previous order for reconstruction of the pump station. They've met all the conditions that we put in that order. Site is stable, the work's all done. We did, ask for fencing to be installed 6 inches off the ground, and it has been. And, the only other thing of note is that they were to remove some pavement from the no disturb, and they have done that. So I recommend issuing the COC.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the COC?
I'll move to approve the COC for 98 Worcester Street.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Travis,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
And I am also a yes. The motion carries. All right. Next up is 27 Meadow Lane. Leah, want to give us an update?
Sure. This is a single family house. They're looking for clearance from the order that was for the subdivision as a whole. This lot doesn't have any of the wetland replication or stormwater infrastructure on it. it's all done, they have lawn growing, and any conditions pertaining to this lot have been satisfied. So I recommend issuing the partial COC.
Okay. Do I have a motion to issue the partial COC for 27 Meadow Lane?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
Yeah, motion is second. Roll call vote. Emily,
yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. Thank you. All right, next one up is request for minor change. This is the New England Power Company on Fisherville Pond. Leah, want to give us an update?
Yeah, Jan, can you pull up the plan that Olivia sent us for this one? So we were very recently talking about this project. It was just before us. And if you guys remember at the time, they had an alternate route that they might follow, that they, in the public hearing process, took off the plans because it was near a vernal pool. They're requesting to add that alternate route back because when they went out and scoped out the permitted route, which is the yellow that kind of dips down in this U. That goes by a stand of mature trees that they can't get equipment past. So instead of having to take down those mature trees or damaging them, they'd like to put the purple route back in. So the purple route would be the alternate access, and that yellow star south of it is the vernal pool. So my recommendation was to approve the minor change, but I would add a condition that the temporary matting installed adjacent to the potential vernal pool shall be removed, and this area shall not be traversed by equipment from March 1 to June 1 and September 1 to October 15 to protect amphibian migration activity.
Okay, that's right here. So, one quick question for me, and I think it's just a reminder. Now, all of these access, I'm not going to even call them roads, access paths or whatever, is for the work, and they're not going to be permanent, correct?
So they already exist in the field,
Okay,
I
okay.
believe. So that they're already there.
Yep. Okay, so both of them are there, and so what they're doing is just doing a slight improvement to actually access where they have to put up they're replacing poles, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'll go around, see if anyone else has any other questions. Jonathan, anything else?
No, no other questions.
All right, Travis, any other questions?
No.
And Emily, any questions?
No,
Just a quick last one. Just looking at this plan and looking at the scale, so it's about 50 feet from the vernal pool.
Sounds about right.
Okay, so it's yeah, all right. Okay. I don't have any other questions. So this is being considered as a minor, which means if we vote for this, then we're basically saying that we can, include this alternate access, and they have the right to kind of use it and develop it based on the plans. Correct?
Can you just repeat that? Sorry, I was reading the email chain that I had with them in the background.
Okay. No, I was just saying is that by, this is quote a minor change. We saw it before in the original submission, but
Mhm.
basically what we're saying is, yes, we can add this alternative in, and therefore they can do the work as proposed on the plans.
Right,
Okay.
correct.
No one had any questions. If anyone else has anything else to add, we have Leah proposed the one condition to add. Is there anyone else? I'll go quickly around to see if anyone else has any other conditions or anything else for this minor. So Emily,
no
anything else?
questions. Sorry.
Okay.
Got busy making-
Travis? No problem. Travis?
No. No, nothing else from me.
Okay. And Jonathan?
Yes, I remember talking about this, I don't know how long ago it was. It probably 6 months ago now. I'm not sure how far back it went. But was there a reason that they took out the alternate route in the first place? Was that something that we encouraged them to do based on something else? Or like they took it out, it's now back. It seems like it's a minor change, but what was the reason that it came out in the first place, or was it just the applicant's choice to remove it? I don't know, Leah, if you remember, or Jan, if you remember that. I can't recall the actual meeting.
Yeah, so we didn't specifically ask them to take it out, but we started the conversation about that this one comes closer to a vernal pool, so we might be looking to put restrictions on it. And I think
Mhm.
just at the start of that conversation, I think they just decided to take it out. They didn't think they needed it at the time. But then when they've been out prepping the site and they've gone down that yellow route and they can't get equipment past those trees in that
Got it.
part to the south, so they need to put it back in the
Okay.
plans.
That makes sense. So, and they're good with the minor change condition, that time frame and everything.
Let me look
If
and
we're-
see if we
Because
got that
if they're
far
doing-
into the weeds.
All I was gonna say was it's 2 weeks away from September 1st. So if they were planning to do that work as the summer ends here or they'd have to wait until October, just a question because it's only a few weeks away here. Maybe if they get it passed, if it goes through, then they can get the equipment out there that they need. But it's gonna be stuck out there until after October 15th, right? So like if they got it out there, they just couldn't traverse back across that path until October 15th. So it might present. Just didn't know if it had gone through the applicant to see if we approve this and say, yeah, you can do this if you do that. And they say, well, it doesn't work. I just didn't know if that came up. That's all, Leah. Not trying to
Yeah.
stir the pot. Just wondering,
No,
that's all.
I get what you're saying, and I don't think we got that far in our email conversation. I do think someone is online this evening, for this. So maybe if they can raise their hand and we can promote them to talk, and we could talk through that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Alex Duryea with TRC. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. But yeah, so Olivia briefed me a little bit on the project, and I have been out to this site before for a previous project. And we didn't specifically talk about the dates, but she told me to pass along the information that we will make do with whatever conditions that you have.
Appreciate the input.
Yeah.
Jonathan,
could-
that kind of, go ahead.
Sorry, if you wouldn't mind just clarifying the dates for me again, just so I make sure I have those down correctly.
Certainly. So it's just basically the alternative route is not to be traversed by equipment from March 1st to June 1st and September 1st to March 15th to protect amphibian migration activity from the vernal pool.
October 15th was the end date, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. September 1st to October 15th.
Okay. And just to clarify, so I think that this was something that was brought up in the conversation, but so the plan is to put temporary timber matting down to go through this area. So would that just mean that the timber mats are to stay in place during that time and just not used?
That's a very good question. I have my take on it, so let me check with other folks on the commission to see what their opinion is. Jonathan.
Does the timber matting lay directly across that area? Is it elevated where amphibians can actually get under it? I don't know what that timber matting is going to look like. If it's flat against the ground surface, then I would think that it probably should be removed, but
I don't know enough about amphibian migration, so Sandy or Leah might have, or Jan might have
Yeah,
some
so
inklings.
a couple of things. The one thing amphibians don't like to do is go up vertical walls. So if it's flat and a timber one, depending upon how it's made, is how high it is and how low it sits on the ground. Um, so they may have to go around it, or they would go over it. They would not be going under it. So Alex, I would just double check with you. There is no space underneath the matting. It's right on the wetlands itself, correct?
Generally, yes, the timber matting, it's usually one layer that just goes straight on the ground, but depending on like how saturated the ground is, how much surface water the wetland actually has, there might be several layers of this matting just to make sure that it doesn't totally like sink into the wetland so that the vehicles can use it to get across. So it's hard to say exactly at this time, like whether it will just be one or multiple. But usually, yes, it will be straight on the ground unless, for example, there's a stream that runs through the wetland, in which case we would put mats on like both sides of the stream and then lift them up so there is a little like corridor. But that's generally done just for streams.
Right. Aaliyah, do you have anything to add to that?
Have you guys ever encountered this before and maybe had to, I don't know, provide like a little ramp or something to that effect? Like I know folks do that sometimes to get critters like up and over erosion control. Which I know is a much smaller scale than timber mats, but
To my knowledge, I don't think we've done that before. It's something we could certainly look into. But I can't think of a particular example where we've done that.
And I think from my perspective, the key is there's no activity on, across there during those dates. Cause that's, obviously just because there is, the mat down doesn't mean it's going to impact migration. It may or may not, but any type of vehicles going across there during those general dates, that's when you can, potentially, you know, um, danger or, the amphibians trying to go across. I mean, we all know that how many kills there are crossing like just regular public ways. So I think kind of the question, and I think we can update um, this particular condition to make it so that if you put it in, I'm just making a date up. If you were to put it in the last week of August, but you don't use it for those dates because of the potential of having, basically amphibians cross it, therefore the potential of having, the opportunity to come in contact with them with very large tires. That's not what we're looking for. However, if you put it in and you provide, as Leah was asking, maybe some very simple ways for the amphibians to get around so that they can migrate in all directions that they typically do in the fall, then it can stay and then you just cannot use it again until October 15th. So I think there's some flexibility. The key thing is in those dates, we do not want traffic going across there specifically for the potential of conflicts with the amphibians. So Leah, just I think we can, um, indicate in the condition that if the matting is not installed prior to September 1st, then it can't be installed until the 15th. But if it is installed, and if it isn't already installed, then to provide a reasonable access for amphibians across it and that no traffic can go over it.
okay.
And then after
Alright.
the 15th, it's, um, obviously would like to make sure that you keep an eye out for the amphibians because with our wonderful weather and how it's changing, whether that's a little bit early, a little bit later, it's not, they don't know the calendar. So, um, does that sound reasonable, Leah?
Yeah,
Okay. Jonathan, does that kind of answer your questions?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So I'll go quickly around to check to see if anyone else has anything to add to that particular condition, or if anyone has questions on it. Emily,
Nothing to add, thank you.
Travis,
No, that sounds good to me.
and Jonathan, I think you said that was all right. Okay, already.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. So do I have a motion to basically have a minor change for Fisherville Pond for New England Power, and with the recommendation for the condition that we just discussed?
So moved.
All right, second.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Emily,
yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. Okay. Next one up is Lake Quinsigamond, Flint Pond. Request for a 1-year extension. Leah, want to bring us up to speed on this one?
So the Lake Quinsigamond Commission has their 5-year management plan for the lake. They intend to conduct their in-lake chemical treatment in Zone C, which is the Grafton area this year, upon approval from Natural Heritage, following the original plan they laid out in the NOI. They will also be doing the annual drawdown this winter as they work on the next 5-year plan with Natural Heritage. So their order with us was issued as a 5-year order. Plus they had some COVID tolling, so it's due to expire in September. They're asking for a 1-year extension to cover the activities we just talked about. And then they're gonna come back, once they iron out the next 5-year plan with Natural Heritage, they'll come back and either seek a multi-year extension of the same permit or close it out and go for a new order of conditions, depending on how the scope shakes out through their process with Natural Heritage. So right now, they're just looking for a 1-year extension, and I recommend issuing that.
Okay. Just a really quick question. Does this also go under our local bylaw too?
Yes, it's
Okay.
an order and a wetlands permit.
Okay. Just a quick question on that. I'll go around if anyone has any comments or questions. Jonathan,
No questions, no comment.
Travis,
Nope. No questions.
Emily,
No questions, thank you.
and do I have a motion to issue a 1-year extension for Lake Quinsigamond at Flint Pond?
I'll move to request a 1-year extension for Lake Quinsigamond / Flint Pond.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Roll call vote. Emily,
yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. Okay. So, Leah, next one up is 60 Main Street.
Sure.
Why don't you give us the update on this?
So 60 Main Street was probably just at the last meeting or maybe the one before. They needed an emergency certification from us to fix animal had breached part of the cofferdam. And so I had given them an emergency certification to fix that. They're also under a lot of permitting with DEP because of the contamination plume that's over there. So I issued that, you guys ratified it at a previous meeting. We just need to ratify, I had to issue them a second one, simply because they couldn't get labor lined up to do the work within the first 30 days that we gave them. So I issued them another one to cover them for another 30 days. And they also changed the repair a little bit, so previously they were gonna stake sandbags in place to create like a new dam And instead, they decided to place concrete mix bags in place so that they set that way and kind of build a wall. So they didn't open the bags, they just placed them there and let water mix in and let it set. So it's sturdier and hopefully longer term. So I recommend that you guys ratify the emergency certification, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
The only question I have is, I'm guessing that at some point we'll have a more permanent solution and they'd be coming back for that, correct?
I think so. We have a couple projects coming down the line for that property. That isn't one they're talking about right now, but knowing all of the orders and permits and things they're under, for that site with DEP, I could
Okay.
see them needing to make this a more permanent solution.
Where is 60 Main Street? I mean, I know where Main Street is and stuff. I'm just trying to,
It's Fisherville Mill that burned down
yep,
in the past. Yeah.
okay. All right. I'll go around. Jonathan, any questions on this?
I think I have the same, not the question you asked, Sandy, but if they're just gonna stack up Quikrete bags and leave them as a more permanent solution, again, it might be a good question to ask the applicant. Are they had to come to us for an emergency thing, they couldn't get the staff in time or whatever, the field people in time to get it out there and implement it, but it, you know, I'm not sure stake sandbags or concrete bags just stacked up, like, is that gonna be an effective solution? Are we gonna be back here in a few months with another emergency ratification and problem because they haven't fixed the problem that came up? I guess it's the question that I'd pose. I'm in general, I think it sounds like a good idea to get something in place, but to understand what happens next. Are they creating a bigger mess when it was the concrete, you know, whatever this is fails, you know? I don't know if either solution, not an engineer, but I don't know if either solution is the right solution. I'm just saying, I think that's a question for the applicant. I don't know if it would slow down what is going on today, but simply just a question to see where that's headed, especially if there's more work on that site.
Yeah.
But that's my only
Yeah.
question, like, to kind of jump off what you were saying, Sandy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, this is not a permanent solution, but again, this is all what we're doing right now is ratifying the emergency certification, and then they'll have to come back. But I was just curious on when that is and so forth. So I think maybe that's a question that Leah can check with them on that.
Sure.
Okay, Emily, any other questions with this?
No questions.
Travis, anything?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So Leah, I mean, I understand that you've already issued this and we're just ratifying it, but when you give it to them, if you could ask what their kind of long-term plans are,
Yep.
just so that we keep it on our radar. So, all right. So do I hear a motion to ratify the emergency certificate issued for 60 Main Street?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Emily.
yes.
All right. I am also a yes. The motion carries. All right. Leah, should we folks here for the different continuances yet? Can you tell? If so, we can switch off to that.
Yes.
Okay.
We've got a lot of folks.
Okay, so let's switch off to that. I am just going to start at the first one. And let me see here. I need to go to this one here. All right, so the first one up is 1727 Upton Street. So pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Grafton Stormwater Management Bylaw, and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Conservation Commission will hold public hearing to act upon a notice of intent, application of Grafton Stormwater Bylaw permit, application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit, for the construction of an apartment complex at 17 and 27 Upton Street. And who is present to present this?
That's me, Jean Christie, a principal engineer with Ty and Bond.
You have the floor.
Jan, if I could ask you to pull up the site plans that we recently submitted like last week. That would be great. So we haven't seen each other in a while. I think the last time we were before the board was about June 18th. And quite a bit has changed since then. We've been working through, planning board review comments, through peer review, through, some zoning changes, not changes, but changes to the plan because of zoning. And I can walk through all of those for you tonight. Jan, if you want to go up a couple sheets to the overall layout plan, that may better tell the story. There we go. All right. So you'll see the right-hand side of the project didn't really change a whole lot. The building is still located, further back in the property, extending towards Upton Street, to the right of, or nestled in between all of the wetland areas. The left side of the project at the auxiliary parking lot is where we've seen the most changes. These are due to a couple things. There was some zoning requirements that we were not able to waive or get variances from, so we were adjusting some of our parking layout. We also decided to retain the barn on that western side of the project, which changed the parking lot as well. We had some fire department coordination, and all of that trickled down into the plan you see now. What that means for our stormwater approach wasn't a whole lot. We're maintaining the same stormwater approach using pervious pavers. And then on the west side of the auxiliary lot, there are 2 surface basins that are really shallow. They're only a couple feet deep because of the shallow groundwater conditions, but they are there to meet our water quality requirements and our infiltration requirements. We did receive a letter yesterday from Graves Engineering that gave final sign off on the stormwater design in compliance with the bylaw. There were a couple of items that were we noted as still outstanding. They are minor in our opinion, and I think I did mention to Leah that we would consider requesting those as conditions of approval if we get to that point. But I think as far as the stormwater peer review goes, that part's been completed. Jan, if you could zoom in a little bit more to that central wetland area, we can talk about the changes that have happened there. Thank you. So you'll see that there is still the boardwalk that we, originally proposed, connecting the auxiliary lot to the primary site area. We have, attempted on that left-hand side to stay completely out of the 25-foot no disturb. You'll notice that there's no longer a fencing line, but there's some round things that are indicative of boulders instead of fencing. That was a request from the planning board, is to not use, timber fencing, but to use something a little more durable. So we proposed boulders along the 25-foot no disturb on that left side. We'll move over to the right side in a minute. But the work between the 25 and the 100-foot buffer zone here includes some of our outdoor amenity spaces and landscaping, where we have a dog park, a fenced-in dog park, some outdoor seating area, a lawn area for flexible space, bocce court, and then you'll see that there are now parking spaces within the 100-foot buffer zone here. What we've been able to do with grading is we're not discharging that stormwater to the wetland. We're able to shift all that stormwater to the western side of the project, into those 2 void areas that you can see at the top left corner of the property line there. On the right hand side, really not a whole lot changed. We did again change the fencing type from that timber fence to the boulders. We're still proposing stone dust walking path around the building. The amenity spaces out back, that has not changed. I think if you, Jan, can pan over further to the right to see the back of the building. I don't think anything really over there changed. You know, we tried where we could to pull the stone dust walking path as out of the buffer zone as far, you know, to the building as we could, to kind of reduce those impacts. And again, that boulder demarcation is in the outside of that path to note, you know, this is the limits of kind of maintained area versus more natural growth areas on the outside of that, you know, between that line and the wetland buffer line, or the wetland boundary line, I should say. So with that layout, you know, that then trickled into our phasing plan. You know, while we haven't really changed the components of the phasing and where, you know, what's going to happen when, it did change, you know, what that plan looks like. We did add some areas to that plan to call out each phase having, you know, an approximate disturbance area. None of them exceed 5 acres. And then kind of getting into probably the nuts and bolts tonight. With these changes, there were some changes to our impacts. We did provide, though, an update to that in our most recent letter to the commission. We did take a harder look at what the impacts are associated with that boardwalk work. What's permanent, what's temporary, what needed to be replicated. And what we've proposed at this point is a total of, I think, 392 square feet of permanent impacts associated with tree clearing and boardwalk installation. But we did not change the amount of replication that we're proposing. We're still proposing, you know, over 1,000 square feet of replication area shown in those 2 areas at the top of the page that we can't quite see the leaders on, that have that diagonal hatching. So with those replication areas, we are, you know, exceeding the 1-to-1 replication ratio. As far as some temporary impacts in the wetlands, you know, that was really limited to the area disturbed because of timber matting to, you know, construct the boardwalk. You know, that's where timber mats will be placed down and they'll be picked up at the end, and any, you know, vegetation that has been damaged would be replaced. I do want to remind the commission that in this area, there's a large stand of Phragmites that, you know, we will be managing and, you know, removing. I can't think of the correct word for that at the moment. You know, but this does cross right through there. So it's kind of complementary, I guess you could say. The next piece is something that we talked about at our last meeting, where we looked at the ground covers within the buffer zones. Jan, if you have the letter that we submitted last week that had those 2 tables on it, I'd like to refresh the commission on those. I think the goal with this part of our exercise was to, well, first I should clarify and say table 2 should really say 25 to 100 foot buffer zone, not 0 to 100. So you see the math did not work out. But what I wanted to point out was both in the 100, in the 0 to 25, and then in the 25 to 100, the important parts are we're removing pavement and concrete. We're removing all the gravel that's back, you know, existing there today. And while we're increasing the building within the buffer zone, remember that's clean runoff that we're able to put towards the wetlands, to continually feed and hydrate those wetlands, but not having it be gravel runoff to the wetland. You'll also see at the bottom of each of these tables, the vegetation in buffer zone increases in both of, you know, within the 0 to 25 and 25 to 100. I guess before I go on to kind of some of the you know, outstanding issues that both Leah and Mass DEP had identified, is there any questions on this part of it? Or do you want me to keep going?
Well, why don't this is good. I have a couple of quick questions and
Okay.
I'll check with others. None of these are earth shattering, but as far as just for pure clarification for anyone that happens to be on here, when you're looking at the 0 to 25, based on the existing conditions, you had 11,000 square feet of building in the proposed condition, obviously you have 0 amount, so all the buildings getting removed from 0 to 25 for that area. Just want to make sure that I understand on the building for 25 to 100 feet, that is being increased, but the 0 to 25 no disturb is being all building is being removed from that. And then looking at, what the pavement, what the gravel is getting reduced. And then, yes, there will be a stone dust walking path of about 3,300, which is less than what the uh, impervious area was, or including with the gravel. And so I'm just kind of going through this, just make sure everyone's aware of that. Is not until you get to the 25 to 100 that there is a building increase, and that there is the permeable paver is also being increased. Bottom line, the vegetation for both the 0 to 25 and the 25 to 100 is being increased. So I just want to confirm I'm reading that correctly.
You have it right.
And then the other, this is just a little bit, you indicated the boulders, that you're looking to do the boulders instead of the wood fence. Our standard thing is as long as, there's a visual border, that what you use is up to you. So couple of quick questions. What's the spacing between the boulders? And then the second one is, where are they coming from?
I don't know where they're coming from yet.
Okay.
That's, I think, still to be determined. But I think that the intent with it is that they are placed close enough that you're not getting bigger equipment through. The goal is to leave that area between the boulders and the wetland limits to grow more naturally and have, the vegetation that we're, new seed, new vegetation growing that doesn't need to be mowed all the time. We want it to be more natural, so we don't want to get any mowing in there. So it's going to be, 4 feet. Is it? I don't really know the answer to that. I think I would go by what the commission has had success with in the past.
So, and Leah can chime in on this, but we do it, it's a little bit closer than that, because typically we're dealing with houses, and houses we try to do it less than a lawnmower width.
Okay.
So this is a little different. You're not going to have a push behind lawnmower, I don't think, doing maintenance on this site. So Leah, have we had one similar to this on the spacing? And again,
Nothing's
talk-
coming to mind. It's usually a single family house.
right. So, and then along with that, having the signs there to show that, so that would be the other part of that. So that
Yep.
was kind of question. So I'll quickly go around to everyone else to see if any commissioners have other questions on this. Emily, anything else on what we've heard so far?
No questions, thank you.
Travis,
Nope, no questions.
and Jonathan.
A question would be, I understand that the fence, the barrier is there to prevent dumping in the wetlands, but is the concept also to prevent mowing in the wetlands? If so, then we would probably want to space the boulders close enough that the mowers would not, that we wanted a fence, right? The fence would stop a
Right.
mower, a landscaper from going back there, dumping stuff in there or whatever, at least make them think about the process.
Yep.
Boulders 4 feet apart aren't going to stop that.
Correct. And that's why I was like, you might have bigger lawnmowers, but they're not 4 feet wide,
Well, if we go back to that plan, the site plan, and look at those areas, you're not going to get the biggest pieces of equipment back there anyway to mow those. If
Yep.
you're riding on that stone dust path, like they might do that with hands, residential style mowers or a
Yep.
small commercial style mower. Like it doesn't have to be a tractor, right? So I would argue that if they're opting to go to boulders and not to a fence, then the boulders should be spaced close enough so that it's obtrusive to getting equipment over it, because that's the purpose of the line of boulders, right?
So Leah, what's
So-
the standard one that we use in our condition?
Let me find it. Give me a second.
Okay. All right.
And is there a size to the actual, I mean, like, I know cobbles and pebbles and different, like, is the boulder a specific? I know that these are natural items or potentially broken apart larger stones that you're using here, but is there a dimension that's given of the typical boulder because we're defining it? So if it's too low and flat and they're all just, you know, pieces of slate that are lined up out there that, you know, don't
Yeah.
really pose, you know, is it a boulder? Is it a beach ball? Or is it, you know?
So a lot of times when you're doing the boulders, there's two components of that. One is you just do a minimum weight. So to say like a minimum of like, 300 or 400 pounds, no one's going to go out and just move it. It's, the intention is that you're going to place it with a machine. And you could move it with a machine, but it's not going to get moved by a couple people pushing it. And then the size of it, I don't know, 2, 3 feet. I don't think they have to be exactly the same or anything else. They can certainly be bigger. It's just
Right.
more of, to your point, you don't want something that's easily moved. And usually on residential, it's not that big of a deal. But on a site like this, we'd want to be a little bit more specific on that. So,
And I think, Madam Chair, if I may, we were, with the same approach. We don't want them to be moved by folks. We want them to be heavy enough that no one's pushing them over, and be visible, at least 2 feet, 3 feet above grade. So we see them even when it's snowing, that they're there and, they're not getting hidden by anything. So.
You want me to
Aaliyah,
read? Yeah, I
yeah.
found it. We usually say boulders of 250 pounds or more placed no more than 20 inches apart.
So that, just as an FYI, that would be a typical condition that we would do. And if you want to go larger, be my guest. And my question about where they're coming from, I was just wondering if they're going to be sourced from the site based on the excavation you do. I don't know what the soils are out there.
Absolutely. If we come across boulders of that magnitude, we will absolutely use them on site and not move them.
Yeah, understood. So, Jonathan, does that kind of answer the questions?
Yep. No, and thanks to the applicant for clarifying that too. So.
All right, great. It's just a way to kind of take care of some things, and so feel free to keep on going because there's probably more questions coming.
So the next couple of things I have were, the Mass DEP comments that were issued back in June, and we responded kind of that timeline. And then a couple of outstanding issues that Leah had identified. I'll start with those first. The first was, we talked about the phasing, how there's no waiver required or requesting because we're keeping all phases to less than 5 acres of disturbance. We were talking about lighting along the boardwalk. And Leah had asked if that, had been formally changed to motion activated. And I think that's still an option for us. At this point, we've minimized lighting levels on the boardwalk, shielding them downwards so that we don't have upward or outward spill. But if the commission does want us to include motion activated lights, we can absolutely accommodate that. And, that would be something that we can deal with in a condition of approval, because that would be more of a construction design for us at that point.
Okay, so when we get to conditions, we'll go over that.
Okay. And then DEP did issue, this is going back to June, they did issue their comments way back then. We've responded to them. They were, relative to kind of impacts of the boardwalk installation. They wanted more information on how that was happening, what the impacts are with that, what the replication looked like for that. And then kind of parlaying onto that, they wanted to make sure that a water quality cert was not required, which we do not trigger that threshold. There was an inquiry about what the planting is between, the within the buffer zone, the kind of the mitigation area for buffer zones. We talked about TSS treatment, the treatment trains, and how we've then, used what the town recommended in the bylaw and regulations for stormwater, using the EPA curves for TSS removal for the infiltration. And I think that was about it. There was additional back and forth email correspondence with Mass DEP about the boardwalk specifically and kind of sizing of things. But then we haven't heard anything from DEP since, so.
So one quick question on that. DEP recommended the boardwalk be as high as it is wide. Did they give you a specific reason for that?
Let's see. I'm remembering this conversation. I didn't see specifically where that came from. So I don't really, that's why I think we decided to not explore that, because that, I mean, putting this boardwalk 6 feet high, but 6 feet wide, got a little intense. It may have had additional impacts to buffer zones that we weren't, anticipating with a kind of a flatter at grade boardwalk.
And so how wide is the boardwalk?
It's still 6 feet through the majority of it. You'll see on the plan here that there's those 2 bump out areas that are more for, a seating option or just, nature enjoyment.
And then you also have it at 1 to 3 feet above it, and I'm sure that as far as any hydraulic connections underneath it, that's not an issue.
That should not be an issue. I think, the grade under the boardwalk does vary. I think our plan is to make sure that the boardwalk is still accessible, so that our grades across it aren't excessive. I think it's really pretty flat across the whole thing. It's about 4.8% sloping toward the west. So, kind of generally following existing topography, but still allowing air movement, a couple feet of vegetation opportunities.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it for my list. I'm sure I missed something, but I'm happy
Okay.
to answer whatever questions I did miss.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to ask Leah to kind of go through if there's anything that's been missed or anything else we should have additional discussion on. Obviously, comment number 34, number 36 of Graves' letter, we need to have a conversation about that as far as conditions, but anything else, Leah?
The only other outstanding item we didn't already talk about would just be the remaining waiver request for the work in
Okay.
the no disturb.
All right. So before getting to that, let me just open it up to the public to see if anyone has any questions or comments. Just to let folks know that we're getting to a point where we're going to start discussing about conditions and finalizing the process. So if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand. We'll call on you. And at this point, we're going to continue the discussion, but keep an eye on attendees to see if anyone has any questions. And Jan, just let me know if anyone has raised their hands, and we'll be happy to respond to that. Okay. All right. So first up, Leah, obviously, is the waiver request for the work within the no disturb zone. We've had a lot of discussion around that. Is there anything else that we should discuss before we actually make a motion?
I was just gonna add that, should the waiver be granted, I was going to point back to the documentation, like the tables we went over, earlier this evening, to justify the overall improvement to the no disturb as the funding to go with that waiver.
Makes total sense. Let me go around the commission to see if anyone has any specific questions as it relates to the waiver request. Jonathan.
I don't have any questions on the waiver.
Travis
Nope, nothing from me.
and Emily.
No questions.
Yeah, I do not have any specific questions on the waiver request. I think we've spent a lot of time going over it to make sure there's a reason why we're allowing that, which is basically a lot of the improvements, as Leah indicated, specifically the 2 tables that demonstrate, especially for the 0 to 25 foot no disturb zone, the improvements that are being proposed Having said all of that, do I have a motion for the waiver for the no disturb?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
If there's any discussion, you can just let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to do a roll call vote. And just curious, Jan, has anyone raised their hand?
Nothing from the public.
All right, thank you very much. All right, roll call vote. Emily,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
I am also a yes. And so the waiver for the work within the no disturb zone has passed. And that is based on the justification of the overall improvements in the no disturb zone. All right. Next up, Leah, we should take on next.
Do you want to back up to the couple of Graves comments?
Sure.
So
so-
the, oh,
Go ahead.
Go
Go ahead. Go ahead. You go ahead.
All right, so comment 34 was that sheet C301 shows a curb that's going to direct stormwater toward the wetland, but will cause an issue for the abutter, so it needs to be moved north. And then the adjacent grading in the parking lot revised accordingly. And comment 36 is that the landscaping plans need to be updated to include the trees and the shrubs in the latest layout. So, when we get to talking about conditions, I was going to suggest that we be in receipt of a revised set of plans that address those two comments, as well as Graves' final sign off asserting that it satisfies those two comments.
And no work can start, obviously, until those conditions are met.
Right.
Okay. Quick roll call if anyone has any questions on those two conditions, or have any thoughts, or have an opinion that you don't think we should do these conditions based on those two outstanding items from the peer reviewer comments. So, Emily,
No questions. Thank you.
Travis,
No, that works.
okay, and Jonathan.
They sound reasonable. Works for me.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that based on what they are, and I think we already have the updated landscape plans, correct, Leah?
I'm not sure which came first, their revision or Jeff's letter.
Okay.
I can chime in if you'd like.
Oh, please do.
So our landscape plan does show, trees. I think one of Jeff's comments was on that left-hand side where in the auxiliary parking lot where the new driveway curves around to go down to those 8 spots. We were a little light in screening between our driveway and the property just to the north. So we wanted to put additional screening in there. So we have trees shown on the plans, but we don't have our low growth shrubs shown in symbols. They're shown in a hatch. So they're there. They're just not as obvious as they could be. So we'd like to make them more obvious. And that's what that landscape plan update would include.
And just a quick clarification, the parking spaces moved, but no additional parking spaces added?
It's a good question. So I don't remember what we last had before the commission. Let's see, I can probably pull it up real quick. It looked like we had 188 spaces proposed previously on, the last set of plans you had seen. This set revised it down to 183. And that
Okay.
was because of all of the zoning requirements that we were trying to meet. So we have 179 spaces for the residential use. 3 spaces to be short-term parking and 1 space to be used for the barn.
Okay.
Total
And again,
one.
I'm just checking that additional parking spaces were not
Yep.
added. Okay.
Correct.
All right, Leah, now the fun stuff. So as far as the findings go, they seem to be fairly straightforward. Do you want to just review those quickly?
Sure. So I have 2. One is per the applicant's testimony, soil conditions on site could not support driven in piles for the boardwalk, which would have avoided crane impacts. And 2, that the soil remediation work for lead beneath the existing garage is to occur as part of this order and permits.
Okay. So just quickly around, any questions or comments on these findings, or if you think there should be any others? Emily,
No, thank you.
Travis,
Nope.
Jonathan,
If you're not using driven piles, is it sonotubes? What's the base of the boardwalk that? I thought we were using like micro piles or some basic pile installation for the foundation. So what's the foundation system for that boardwalk?
So, I think the original thought was to use helical piles where we kind of screw them in, and because of the soil conditions, those weren't allowable. So now these are steel piles, steel tubes driven in, and then filled with concrete. And I think they're 6 inches, 8 inches. Somebody else on the team can confirm that with me. But I think that was the finding, that the helical piles, which are smaller, less disturbance, wouldn't work on this site.
Okay, thank you. Just looking at the report we're looking at, it says soil conditions could not support driven in piles for boardwalk. So I'm assuming that they couldn't support helical, but they will support
That
steel
is-
pipe drip.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yes, we may need to reword that.
yeah, so, yep, okay, very good question. Yeah, I mean, with the helical piles, you can almost install a whole boardwalk without ever touching um the wetlands, but this one you're gonna touch it. There's no way around it. So okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Anything else?
Nothing else.
All right. Yeah, Leah, we will, when we do a kind of an overall vote, these findings will just be included in that vote, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, starting with special conditions. So, Leah, just a quick questions. Has the applicant seen these conditions yet?
All, but I think I added 1 since I sent the list to Jean.
Okay. So I'm going to go through these, and if the applicant has any questions or comments, please let us know and we'll stop and kind of review it. Otherwise, just for the public, I'll go through these and list off the conditions that we have. And Leah, you can tell me where I go wrong and said something incorrectly, but I'll start from the top and go through it. So first of the special condition is a copy of the SWIP. For obvious reasons, we do not review the SWIP. We want it, we would like a copy of it. So when we do site visits and so forth, we understand what the site is being operated under as far as the stormwater pollution prevention plan and what erosion control, et cetera, should be done on the site. To what was already kind of discussed previously is that revised plan set that satisfies outstanding Graves comments to be provided. You're gonna have to tell me what PTCOW means.
Prior to commencement of work.
Thank you. I will have a separate discussion about how my dislike of acronyms have grown over the years as they become more and more common, even though when people don't have a clue what they are. So that's fine as long as you can interpret it. We'll keep going here. The next special condition is snow to be stored in extra parking spaces. Recreation areas are trucked off site in accordance with DEP snow removal policy. It shall not be stored within any buffer zones or within stormwater management facilities. Lighting fixtures over the boardwalk shall be focused and directed and have shielding behind them so as no illuminate any part of the adjacent wetlands. They should not exceed the illumination shown on the approved photometric plans. Now, this is one question. So that's the condition that we have right now. And the only other part of that was an outstanding question is whether they should be on a motion detector. And obviously that's just a way to, keep it darker for most of the night. So I'll go around to the commission to get their opinion on whether, having this condition in about kind of the shielding, et cetera, and how much light that we're showing here is sufficient, or is there a desire to have a sensor on it so it's motion detected, so it only goes on when someone's walking there or some animals walking on it. So Emily.
I don't think I know enough to have an opinion here.
Okay. Jonathan,
Are they gonna be on time? So they're meant to be able to be turned on by a person. So that's a safe access across the boardwalk. But we also want them to turn on for animals, or is it like,
no,
I-
so right now there is no motion detector, so they're on
There is-
from, it's a time,
They're on
it's on all
timer.
night. So,
yeah, I agree that this is a good special condition. I'm wondering if it's, I guess it's more for the applicant that if they have lights with shielding to not illuminate the wetlands that only cue on when
It seems like a good condition. I just wonder how constructible and what that's gonna look like, but that's probably more for the applicant than for us if they're
Right.
agreeing with the condition, that's all, so.
yeah, I mean, I don't think we have any issue with the safety aspect of it, that if someone's out there walking at whatever time, there should be light available. But if no one's
Right.
walking there between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., there's no reason for it to have lights on it. So I'll move to
And
Travis to see if you have. Oh, go ahead,
Cindy, I just had one
Jonathan.
more thing. Do they have
Yep.
like a minimum, and I'm probably outside of the realm, so I guess I won't ask it, but it's simple, is there a minimum foot candles or lighting that's required is part of that? And I don't know if that's part of, if it would heed to this, you know, if we have low light fixtures or whatever to illuminate the path. I'm sure there's some code specific,
So,
but that
so
may
to
not
be,
be part of the
yeah,
jurisdiction. So,
yeah, to be specific, they submitted, basically a lighting plan that has, the foot candles on it. So there's a photometric plan that was submitted to us. And so part of Leah's, her condition is that they have to install what they submitted to us. So that's, so it's low to the ground. It's not supposed to be, I don't know, Leah, if you even have what the foot candles are. And maybe I'll go back to the applicant if you have the foot candles for that boardwalk.
We do, they're like usual, they're kind of more prominent at each light fixture. I think there's about 5 or 6 across the whole board walk, ranging from, 0.0 kind of at the edges to, I think the highest is 21. And that's right underneath the light. I think, even this photometric is probably more conservative than what we already have in our heads for what this is gonna look like.
21 is really high.
Yeah, and that's now ringing a bell. I can have our landscape architect talk about it a little bit more if you want him to.
Why
Joey
don't you,
Jenko,
sure, why don't you hold off for just one moment and get Travis's input to see if there's any other questions around this. Travis, anything else to add to this?
On the lighting, I think it'd be great if they could do it, the motion sensing lights.
Okay. So go ahead, Gene, and check with your landscape architect.
Yeah, it's Joseph Jenga, if you allow him to. He's the
Absolutely.
attendees.
Uh,
Hi there, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, speaking to the lighting on the boardwalk, right now we're showing 6 total fixtures mounted to the face of the boardwalk railing. And as Gene mentioned, the fixtures that we're using currently are pretty conservative, much brighter, especially with those bright spots directly adjacent to the fixtures, as noted on the photometrics plan. So that's really the maximum amount of lighting that we would go with. But we are looking into alternate fixtures, that would have a lower intensity and would be spaced more frequently. So it's providing a more uniform but lower intensity light across the boardwalk. As it is, even with those fixtures, I think the photometrics plan indicates pretty minimal spill over the boardwalk into the wetland, especially with the boardwalk sitting a few feet above the finished grade of the wetlands. So happy to field any other questions about the lighting here.
And just how easy is it to just do a motion detector on it?
I'm not a lighting designer myself. We've been consulting with a third-party lighting consultant for this. I'm not sure exactly the considerations for putting in a motion detector system. Although, I think it's certainly possible. We do want to make sure that this is a foolproof, safe pedestrian walking path, connecting these two areas of the site across the boardwalk.
And I do know, obviously, the motion detectors, even on large campus projects, are becoming very common. See them all the time. And then again, I understand, if 21 is just a really high foot candle, I get that. Obviously, the more you put, the lower, the intensity component of it. But I'm just thinking of what just to let people know, like what you would typically see at a gas station that's lit up like anything is actually not as high as 21-foot candles. So it's just really, I think it's having a balance. Obviously, there's no question about having it safe. That's not what we're talking about. We're just looking for opportunities for it to be dark at certain times. Um, so as far as this goes, Leah, as far as like maybe changing um, this, um, this condition to, um, not to just to say not to exceed illumination shown on approved photometric plan is, but just to have, a more even lower, foot candles across the boardwalk. Basically, you end up putting more fixtures in, but they're smaller and not as high intensity and so forth. So I don't know, Lee, if you have anything on that.
I can make that change.
Okay. And then I would also make it a suggestion that they investigate having a motion detector and I'm not even worried about the timing of it, just so that if no one's out there at 2 to 4 o'clock in the morning, that it's dark. That's all. Okay. All right. Just back to the applicant. Do you have any other questions on that or that type of condition? It's more of a design kind of guidance as opposed to a specific requirement.
That works. We agree that, less intense, maybe more frequent, but less intense lighting is appropriate in this location. And we'll take a look and see what kind of technologies we have for motion activation. Will work in this application.
Yep. Keep on going on this. As far as the next condition goes, when vegetation growth adjacent to and beneath the boardwalk threatens the structure, integrity, stability, or pedestrian navigability. Wow, tough words here, Leah. Native species may be trimmed back from the structure by hand, and invasive species may be pulled out by hand. No herbicide allowed. So that's just giving you directions on how to maintain that. Um, Wetland peer review oversight of the work. So basically, that's our peer reviewer for the wetlands to kind of oversee, especially some of the revegetation and restoration work, just so that everyone's on the same page there. Prior to commencement of work, a signed illicit discharge statement shall be submitted. That's a little bit of a cleanup. Prior to commencements of work, a plan showing meets and bounds to be submitted. Bond for erosion control, site stabilization, stormwater management, wetland replication. So typically, just as if we were talking a subdivision, we usually coordinate with the planning board as far as any potential bonds. For most of our project, we're not looking for anything to be built as far as a project goes. That's not our responsibility. The bond is really just for making sure the site is stabilized. If for some reason work stops in the middle of it, and typically it's more about erosion control, site stabilizations, i.e., if there's this exposed, earth there, then someone to plant it and so forth. It's pretty basic. So just to get the site stabilized, so there's no problems with the erosion or anything else into the wetlands replication. Typically, the way we do this, we would look to the applicant to come up with an estimate to stabilize the site, just so that if for some reason the project does not go forward, there is a basically a pot of money to stabilize it, and so it's not exposed. That's really all we're looking for. We have no intention of building anything. That's like a subdivision would never do that. So that's where that is. And we will always coordinate any kind of bonds with the planning board. I don't think they would have a bond on this particular type of project. Okay. So do you have any issues with that as far as the bond goes? It's pretty
No issues.
specific.
I think the only question is timing. Is that something we want to figure out sooner than later, or are we waiting until we've advanced drawings through construction level, so that we can better price out that? Is it just
We
for construction?
Yeah, it's for construction, so the its bond is you can't not going to be able to start construction without it done.
Okay.
So depending upon your own schedule, it's up to you on that one.
Okay.
And then basically wetland seed mix to be used in any bare areas post invasive removals. Wetland buffer restoration mix and barrier to be installed per plans to protect remainder of no disturb signage along the barrier. Leah, we're going to do this typical every 20 feet.
Yes, and I believe we usually say, I mean, it's harder with boulders, but if you wanted to affix it to the barrier, we provide that option as well.
Dewatering details shall be reviewed prior to commencement of work. Dewatering activities shall be monitored daily to ensure that sediment-laden water is appropriately settled prior to discharge. Water shall not be discharged directly into areas subject to jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act or the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Management of groundwater and soil collected during excavation and dewatering activity shall be monitored by a licensed site professional in accordance with Mass DEP regulations. All excavated materials not reused on site shall be removed from the site immediately and legally disposed of. And the last one here is infiltration BMP shall be protected from construction phase sediment. So kind of big picture, is there anything of these conditions that you have questions on? I know
No
I kind of
questions.
flew. Okay,
These are
I
all
kind of
straight-
flew through them. So
Nope, I was able to review them beforehand, so no issues for us.
okay. So next thing is, I'm losing my place. So have we? So we already voted on the waiver, correct, Leah?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not really quite going senile yet, but there's a lot here. Okay. All right. Checking with Jan. Anyone from the public has raised their hand or asked any questions?
Nothing from the public.
Okay, great. All right. We are near the end. Anything, Leah, that I have forgotten?
Nope, we did it all.
All right. Sounds good. So next motion, can I have a motion to close the hearing, issue the order and permits with the above findings in special condition as just discussed. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. Good luck, and let us know if you have any questions. Please reach out to staff.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right, Leah, what's up next?
The water district.
All right. I need to find this one. And I need to move the cat. Sorry. This is Max. Max is going to get put on the floor now. Okay. All right. So pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent application for Grafton Wetland Bylaw permit for the repair of a retaining wall at 98 Worcester Street. Who is here to discuss this?
Robert Sims, 111 Fowler Road, represent Northbridge, representing the Water District with comprehensive environmental.
All right, you have the floor. And by the way, it's Grafton, not Northbridge.
No, I live in Northbridge.
Oh, okay, of North. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, no problem. You have the floor.
Yeah. So last time the DEP had sent in their comments, like the 2 days before the hearing, we were, asking that the hearing be closed conditionally. That was not welcome. So we came back, a month later to try and get the hearing closed. We haven't really provided any additional information. We're just waiting for, I think we answered all the questions last time. We need to provide the stamped plans for the wall, and we'll get with Oxbow on the turtle protection plan that the conditions are going to come out of that. So I'm not sure what else what else I'm in for.
That's okay. Leah, you want to kind of give us an update on the status?
Sure. So the DEP comments that came through were very straightforward. Just that we wait to see what NHESP has to say, which we covered last time. And that they recommend the commission consider conditioning the work to occur only during low flow periods of the year, which I have on my list for special conditions. They have a waiver request for work and a no disturb, and then I have 1 finding and 3 conditions.
All right, great. So as far as granting the waiver, so obviously this proposed work is within the 25-foot no disturb. It's a replacement of an existing wall. So that's the first thing that we need to take care of. Do I have a motion to grant the waiver for work within the no disturb zone?
I'll move to grant a waiver for work within the no disturb zone for Doris Drive.
All right, do I have a second?
Can I second on something I'm not eligible to vote on?
So, no, you cannot. So you did not do
Second.
the Mullen. Okay,
I
so we
didn't
have
get it in time, unfortunately.
okay, not a problem, which means you can also also vote on this, which
Okay.
is fine because we have a quorum here anyway. So, all right, so so we have a motion for the waiver request. We have a second. We'll do a roll call vote of eligible voters. Travis,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. The waiver carries. The motion for the waiver carries. Okay, so that's that. As far as findings go, Leah, it's pretty straightforward that 80 feet of the permanent bordering land subject flooding impacts is a surface area of the top of the new wall. That's the finding that we're going to make. Is there anything we should discuss on that?
Nope.
Okay, then we're going to start with special conditions. Prior to I get to the special conditions, I am just going to put it out there. If the public has any comments or questions, please raise your hand. We're happy to either answer those or have the applicant answer those. And in the meantime, we're going to talk about special conditions. Leah, you want to just kind of go through the special conditions quickly? I think you
Sure.
pretty much already talked about them.
So 1, prior to commencement of work, the applicant shall provide a stamped plan for the retaining wall. 2, all NHESP conditions from their July 1 letter. I will be copying the language of all the NHESP conditions from their letter, is more like it. And the commission is to receive copies of the turtle protection plan and NHESP's approval of it prior to commencement of work. And we would also like copies of the annual reports that NHESP asked for. And
Okay.
3rd is that the work shall occur during low flow periods.
All right. So first to the applicant, do you see any of these special conditions as an issue, or do you have any questions on them?
No questions.
All right,
and
thank you.
no issues.
All right, thank you. And based on that, and Jan, anyone from the public?
Nothing from the public.
All right, thank you very much. Based on that, I will do a quick check with the commissions, see if they have anything else or they need anything else. So Emily, you're not voting on this, so I don't have to ask you a question. So Travis, anything on this?
Nope.
Jonathan?
No.
I also have no questions. Do I have a motion to close the hearing and issue the
I'll-
order?
Yeah, I'll move to close the hearing, issue the permit with the conditions as discussed for Doris Drive.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Jonathan?
Yes.
Travis?
Yes.
I am also a yes. Motion carries. Order is being approved. Good luck.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. No problem. All right. Last
Next.
public hearing, right, Leah?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, so let me go back to this one here. Okay. So to open up the continuance, pursuant to Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Grafton Stormwater Management Bylaw, Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent application for Grafton Stormwater Bylaw permit, application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit for the construction of a warehouse at 12 Centennial Drive. Who is here to discuss that?
John Perry here from Langen Engineering. evening.
You have the floor.
Excellent, thank you. We sent some slides over, Jan, late this afternoon, if you have those.
Yep, I have them.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a continuance of the public hearing from last month for the project on Centec Boulevard. And next slide, please. There's a few items that we wanted to update the commission on tonight. A few questions that we discussed last time. We have some more answers for, and a few supplemental documents that we've submitted. So last week on the 6th, we sent in a waiver request for the stormwater bylaw that limits disturbance of 5 acres. So we want to present some information on that. We've relocated our wetland replication area. We've considered additional low impact development measures. There's some miscellaneous stormwater items I want to kind of close the loop on. And then we've gone out to the site to perform some additional soil test pits recently at the request of both Graves Engineering and based on some comments from DEP. So those are the items that I'm going to cover tonight. Next slide, please. Okay, so with the waiver request, and there was a packet sent, as I mentioned before, to the commission last week with formal, written request and some explanation of pretty much everything I'm going to say here and present. With that request, we put together a construction sequencing plan, and we wanted to document in a little more detail for the commission, our general process to construct the site. And we've worked in conjunction with the contractor that will be in charge of the work here as well. And the main point was to depict how the site will be constructed with the intent of maintaining soil stability along the way. And I want to get into some of these different areas here and sequencing items. So essentially, the first thing that the contractor will do, and we'll cut in a construction access point from Centec Boulevard, shown in the number 1 there. All the numbers obviously are kind of sequential here. So they'll work there, a stabilized construction entrance, just for some area to mobilize their equipment. And then they will install the perimeter controls around the site. So per our erosion control plans that were submitted in the original documents, we're proposing to use wire-backed silt fence around the entire downstream perimeter. So that will be installed before trees are removed, and they will be able to for the most part, use the existing trail network that's out there to do that. There will probably need to be a little bit of tree clearing in order to install erosion controls, but we feel that the vast majority can be installed without much tree clearing at all. Next, they'll begin to do some tree clearing in the area designated with the 3 there, which is kind of to the westerly portion of the page. And the first, real item that we want to do is install the temporary sedimentation control areas, which will be, again, for the most part, to begin along the western area, the low-lying area of the site designated with the number 4 there. So that'll kind of sequentially follow some tree clearing in that area. They'll also start to build as a wall in that area as well, a retaining wall in that area, start to prep for that wall. There'll be some ground improvements that need to be done for soil stabilization there. So they'll be working that low-lying westerly area first. Then in the area designated with the 5 there, and as you'll notice, that's like pink, meaning that that's a cut area. We'll be moving to that area to start clearing trees and stumping and grubbing to prepare for our deep excavation areas. And as they're doing that, they'll be, again, building the wall to the western portion. And as they're excavating the area in pink, they'll start to do their mass earthwork and push that material to the west. Mostly building up the retaining wall in the reinforced zone behind the retaining wall, again, kind of designated in that number 4 area, just that bit that they need to fill immediately. All the while, the large fill area designated with the number 7, that can generally remain with the stumps in the ground. The tree crew will probably be working that as these other areas that I mentioned before are occurring, but the stumps can largely be maintained there until they get to a point where that area becomes the working area and they start to fill in that area as well. But in that instance, when they get to that point, the areas to the west, near where the wall is, those will begin to become stable and controlled more so. And then once that area is generally stabilized, they'll move to the employee parking lot designated with the number 8, and then likewise to the trailer staging designated with the number 9 there. Next slide, please. And this is just a cross section essentially through the site. And we thought this was just a really good representation to show why we can't break this into individual 5-acre pieces, right? It's a cut to fill site, where in the area designated as red, as you can see on the top profile there, that area is going to be cut down to grade, and the area to the west, noted in green, will be filled. So it's obviously cut to fill. So you have to be kind of doing both at the same time, essentially.
Just a very quick question. Is that section an exaggerated vertical axis? Is it exaggerated or is it a 1-to-1 scale?
It is exaggerated.
I'm just asking so people, when they look at it, it looks like you have a 50-foot high fill in the back of the retaining walls. It might be good for you to mention what that height is, simply because it's exaggerated on this section. That's all.
Yep. Well, there is on the westernmost portion of that site, it is a large retaining wall. So that at its highest point, it's about 65 feet on that western edge there.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, next slide. And, we did include originally too a few different erosion control sheets. And we just want to call attention to that because those do go hand in hand with that sequencing plan that I just mentioned. And this is the first phase of erosion control that will be installed with that sequencing. So again, the perimeter controls along the very bottom of the slopes, and then those kind of dark dot squiggly lines through the site there, those 3 of them, those represent intermittent rows of compost tubes, and those will follow contours, so they are flat and they're not going, more, they need to go with the topography as opposed to against the topography to be effective. So we're showing 3, there could be more as needed. And again, there'll be temporary sedimentation basins along the way as well. And the contractor will be responsible to follow the SWIP plan that is developed and, utilize temporary seeding and mulching, diversion swales, things of that nature as needed along the way. Next slide, please. Okay, and this was our phase 2 erosion control plan here. As the site starts to develop, erosion control is always in flux essentially as the site's being worked, but as the site starts to become more developed and stabilized, all of our stormwater will be protected and maintained. All of the outlets will start to become developed and protected, and our flared ends and splash pads will be in function at some point throughout this process as well. So next slide, please. Okay, next topic on the agenda that I had shown at first on the first slide. Last meeting, we discussed the wetland replication area, and so if you recall, on the bottom left area there, we're showing the existing depression. It's an existing isolated bylaw wetland that is being filled. And our original plan was to replicate that within the westernmost stormwater basin. But based on some conversation we had at the last meeting, we've taken a little bit of a different approach, and we are proposing to relocate that to the new location shown there as proposed replication. And we do have a slide that shows that zoomed in a little bit more, but I just want to call attention before we flip to the proposed versus existing area and volume. So as you can see, our proposed replication area is 7,400 square feet versus the existing 7,200 square feet. And our proposed volume is 9,350 cubic feet versus the 6,770 cubic feet existing. And that is important because it's an isolated wetland, but it's also a bylaw isolated land subject to flooding. Next slide, please. Okay, and you can see that wetland replication area here in the light blue shading. And what we're proposing essentially is we have a detention stormwater basin just to the east of it. And that basin takes only roof runoff, so it's clean water that's coming in there. And that would be managed through an outlet control structure with a low flow orifice in it. The water would slowly outlet to that wetland replication area. It's a little hard to see on this slide here, but in the packet we provided, there are some details and cross sections for the wetland replication area. The inlet to it would not be a typical inlet. It would not be like usually you'd have a flared end section just kind of with water coming out. We're proposing to have a T pipe come off the end of it with perforations encased in crushed stone, so that the water is really kind of like leaching through the stone as opposed to creating any sort of scour potential. And then on the western side would be a level spreader type of curb as an overflow. But the volume would the volume of the 9,000 plus or minus cubic feet that I mentioned on the last slide would be below that outlet. Also on this slide, as discussed at the last meeting, we are showing some pervious asphalt areas shown in the darker blue. And we're also showing a bioretention area shown in the light green oval there. And this is a little different than what we proposed as far as the location of the pervious asphalt when we came in last month with our concept plan. And when we went back to the office after the meeting, talking it through with the commission, we started to look at the stormwater handbook and to run our actual calculations and start documenting compliance of the pervious asphalt. And one challenge with it is the site is considered a LUPL, or a land use with higher potential pollutant loading, and pervious asphalt is not typically used in that situation, mainly because there's a requirement to have at least 44% pre-treatment before discharging to an infiltration basin or an infiltration BMP. So we were kind of scratching our heads a little bit on how to document compliance of that, but we thought it through. We actually got on we corresponded with Graves Engineering, who did the peer review, the stormwater peer review, to make sure they were on board with our approach as well. And what we've decided to do is put the pervious asphalt not at the low points as we had originally intended. If you recall, we originally presented having pervious asphalt in the low points and using that in lieu of catch basins to collect runoff. But in this case, we're putting it more on the high points of the parking lot so that rainwater will essentially directly enter the pervious asphalt without having to sheet flow over the traditional asphalt. So it's not getting that first flush coming through the parking lot. It's not picking up, sediment and things of that nature. So we are proposing about 27,000 square feet pervious asphalt, and we're showing it. You may be wondering why it's not going all the way down to the west through the parking lot there. We're proposing it in areas where we have the 4 feet of separation of groundwater and ledge within the parking lot. As you get further west, we get more into a cut condition, and at some point we would run into ledge there, and it didn't make good sense to put the pervious surface where just under the finished grade you'd have a restrictive layer. And then again, touching on the rain garden or bioretention area in that landscape island there, and I know on this plan in the scale it looks a little small, but it's actually quite large. It's about 20 feet by 90 feet long, so just under 2,000 square feet, or plus or minus 2,000 square feet. So we would propose to, and that is at a low point, so it works out nicely, where water could just sheet flow into the bioretention area. We're proposing to use a device called a Rain Guardian, which captures the stormwater. It has a screen for some pre-treatment, essentially acting as a forebay and conveying it into the rain garden for percolation and treatment through the soil media.
Yeah, just as an FYI, it's a great little device and it works really well with bioretention. It has almost no water quality kind of, I know they say it does. Look at the volumes of it. It's, yeah. Don't have any issues with it, but yeah, I've used them before, and yes, they serve a purpose, but you're not going to get a lot of bang for your buck on the water quality side of it.
Understood. Okay, next slide. Okay, so just a few miscellaneous items that we've discussed already, but we want to document that they're in the plans. And one of them is shown with this blue circle here, and that is the shutoff valve on the stormwater line that conveys water from conveys runoff water from the maintenance area and the fueling area of the facility. And then on the right-hand side here in that rectangle, we've added a note to the plan that is the truck wash, and just documenting that will have a rainwater harvesting and reuse cistern. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and one thing that we didn't have in our packet last week, but we wanted to show because there will be some supplemental information being provided with our final stormwater report, is that as I mentioned before, DEP had requested that we perform a few more test pits to get better coverage in some of our stormwater basins, and Graves had commented that we should perform an additional test pit in the basin that's actually in Shrewsbury, but it's essentially furthest to the plan east here, just south of our truck parking area there. So we went out last week and performed an additional, I think it's 11 test pits to get a little more better, a little bit of coverage. And as you can see, also in our employee parking lot, we were able to pick up some more test pits as well, just to confirm soil conditions and restrictive layers where, now we're proposing to do the pervious asphalt. So we have some good data there. And I think that was the last slide. I will say that based on the work we've been doing, we are still finalizing the plans, and we will be updating to show all this information that we've presented here tonight, and we'll be providing formal plans and an updated stormwater report for record to document everything. So happy to answer questions.
All right, great. Jan, if you go back to the beginning of the presentation, I think it'd be just easier to kind of flip through them and kind of go through kind of my questions. And I'm not expecting a full answer when I ask the questions, but just things to think about. Some of them are fairly straightforward. Some of them you're probably still working on it, but I'll start, and then the rest of the commissioners can chime in. You mentioned basically type of silt fence that you're using, wired back. Basically, is that a super silt fence?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
And
there's two types that I've used before. One would be essentially like a chain link fence with silt fence on it.
Yep.
And then another one is more like a wire mesh backed, a little more of a standard silt fence.
right.
I've seen it with metal stakes as opposed to wooden stakes. What we've detailed is more the latter, not the chain link, but the more traditional wire backed.
Right. Yeah, I've heard them both referred to as super silt fence. The wired back ones is, pretty standard and so forth. That's fine. I just wanted a clarification on that. But then I had just some general questions on this particular slide. And I know this isn't all the detail that you're going to have on this, but I understand, yeah, you want to come in, cut a road in, set it up so you have a staging area. And then your next thing that you're doing is putting in erosion control perimeter, and that's so you're going to have some roads cut in to get back there. I'm just wondering what your plans on is, how you're going to install the perimeter erosion control from your staging area.
So under today's conditions, there is a trail network through there, and it is drivable. And when we were performing our test pits and soil exploration, we were able to get around the entire site using it, and we had to do some minor tree clearing just to get to certain areas, but we're pretty confident that we can get to most, if not all, places we need to without building a big haul road through there or something like that.
Okay. And then as far as like, so yeah, you put your perimeter erosion come in, and then you're gonna go and probably do the retaining wall next. That's 3, and then you have it set up to fill. That's fine. Just as a what kind of retaining wall is that going to be? Just curious as far as if it's a 65-foot high wall. Um, what's it made of? Is it, some sort of prefab modular block, or is it a design vertical concrete wall?
The actual, product right now is still being vetted out, but
Okay.
it will most likely be a mechanically stabilized earth block wall.
Okay. And I certainly don't have a specific, thing that you're supposed to be doing. That's up to you. It's just when you start doing that and it's 65 feet and you have a batter to it, all of a sudden that line isn't really 2 feet wide, it's 20 feet wide. So just to make sure that our concerns again has to do with soil stabilization, the wetlands, and in this case here, making sure that you have plenty of room to do that. That's a fill area, so that means you're going to be filling in on your, soil tiebacks and all those kind of things, and depending upon what system you go with. So that's more just to think about it, and so that it's presented in such a way that we get an accurate kind of look at what that wall is, because it's not a thin line on a plan.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's it's pretty different. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yep, been there before. So, the line that we show on the plan, I think, is 10 feet thick or maybe 12, because we did take that into account, starting at the bottom. So where we show that that line is as close to the wetlands as we will get, and then we work back from there, accounting for the batter. So, it doesn't vary, I don't think, just because of ease of drawing it, but we kind of went more conservative. So at the highest point, accounting for a typical block thickness and a typical batter, it ends up being about 12 feet from the toe of the wall to the back of the top of the wall.
and then obviously it'll have its own wall drainage system behind it with periodic. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Um, just like you talked about these different areas then being stabilized. What do you mean by stabilized? What is your definition of something being fully stabilized?
Well, so the intent is that, like, that large area number 7, right? As they're cutting into the area number 5, 'cause that's all excavation. That area number 5 is really kind of being worked in order to facilitate the fill. So for as long as we can, we'll leave that area number 7 with, forest mat or stumps in there, um, until we need to start pulling them out to start filling that area. Um, and as we're doing that, pulling stumps out, as areas are exposed, we'll be basically watching the weather and taking into account for, large areas that may be exposed, and if we need to use temporary matting, like jute netting, straw cover, things like that. That'll all be detailed in the SWIP plan, and the contractor will need to
Yeah.
abide by that.
And then just leading to that is just a kind of another question, and you may not have this all sorted out. And that is, as far as erosion control oversight, I can say that we'll probably put some standards on who's doing that. I don't think we need to have a PE do it, but we probably want someone with a certification or someone with experience, someone with the new with the new EPA certification, those type of things, and need to get copies. But that erosion control oversight is going to be key. But more importantly to that is having plans in place. I mean, we've all lived through the past couple of years with the intense rainfalls that show up without notice, and we've probably all experienced sites with dramatic erosion control issues that happen very quickly. So it's no longer designing on some of the things we did 10 years ago, but really anticipating those intense storms and how they are going to be handled. And so those are some of the things, whether it's an independent person or if it's someone or having a more robust. I mean, you're trying to you presented some of the plans. I understand that once you get into this and you're looking at the site and you're breaking it down, there'll be a period of pretty extended time based upon the cuts and fills that you will be exposed dramatically to potential significant um, erosion control events. I mean, it's just the size of the site and the size and the frequency and intensity of storms of late. So that's a huge concern, especially because you're asking for a waiver. Not to say it can't be done, it's just that we want to prevent anything from getting to the wetlands. And if you're requesting a waiver, we're not going to have a lot of leeway if something does happen. We'll shut you down. I mean, it's our responsibilities protect the wetlands. And so for a project of this size, with the type of soils out there, with the type of areas and we're talking about, it's going to be a significant effort to make sure that those wetlands are protected. So I don't expect a specific answer on that, but that just gives you the heads up of our concerns. And when someone asks for a waiver from our 5 acres, and the 5 acres is based on experience. So just as a heads up, and so you can start thinking about it. Just kind of a quick question. And again, don't expect you to have the answer off the top of your head, but as far as MS4 compliance and the phosphorus removal requirements, just curious how you're gonna meet those, and whether you're gonna have to do a filter system or if your infiltration can take care of it. So I'm curious with all of that impervious area, how you're gonna make the 60% phosphorus removal. So that just seems like an extreme challenge. One of the other questions, you indicated that quote unquote clean runoff from the roof. It is relatively clean, but what's on top of the roof? What kind of mechanical systems? What is the potential for having issues on the roof? I'm guessing it's a big old flat roof is with internal, downspouts and so forth, but just making sure that if there are mechanical equipment up there, that those are not going to specifically the areas of the replication of the isolated wetlands slash area of flooding and so forth. So, and again, it's not, I don't expect you to have an answer right off the top of the head, but you understand what I'm talking about. If all of a sudden all of your mechanical equipment's on the roof and that's all going to that replication area, the potential of issues is different than other parts of the roof. Let me see. That kind of gives me a quick overview of some of the things. Obviously, this project for us is big concern is erosion control. It's the amount of cuts and fills. It's the height of the wall. It is the time when you're vulnerable and a lot of the site is open and the significant earthworks are going on. And if people aren't very proactive, you're going to have a problem. That's just life and climate change. That's just where it goes. So that's kind of my quick overview of the things that I had that kind of stood out to me. I like to go around to the other commissioners to see if they have other things that they may want to have ask questions about. So I'll start with Jonathan. Anything else?
I think you hit on what I was going to drive a question about the retaining wall as well. But I don't think I have anything else that you didn't just hit on, Sandy.
All right, thanks. Travis, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Leah, is there anything else that you want to go through at this point? I know that we don't have the final review from Graves. Do you want to go through the DEP comments, or is that something that we should wait on?
I was actually just gonna ask, are you guys preparing response letters to both Graves and the DEP comments?
Yes, we are, and those will be going
Okay.
out shortly here. The reason we haven't submitted those yet was based on the test pit request. And, it took us a couple weeks to get contractor mobilized. And as I mentioned before, we just finished this up last week. So we're in the process now of finalizing those responses, and those will be going out shortly.
Okay, so I'm fine waiting to review those before we
Yeah.
bother talking through point by point.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Is there anything else that we should chat about now? I just want to give some heads up on some of the things I'm thinking of and where my concerns are.
I don't think there's anything else on my list that we need to cover tonight. I'll probably just email the team a couple of administrative things that we can take care of in the background.
Okay.
But I don't think we need to discuss them.
And probably the only other thing is adding the porous pavement on the high locations of your parking lot. I have no issue at all with that. It's not a bad, it's a way of reducing, doesn't reduce the amount of impervious, but it has a positive impact on that. Before we get much further, I'd like to open up to any of the public that's online that have questions, just to give you a kind of where we're at. We're still in the middle of receiving information. Kind of the questions that we're bringing up tonight are more like, here are the big things, applicant, that we're really concerned with. We need to get more information on this. Obviously, we're going through a peer review at this time. We do not have that finalized. Mass DEP has made several comments, and we're also waiting for those responses to those comments that we don't have yet. But if any of the applicants have, excuse me, any of the public has any comments for the applicant or questions, please feel free to raise your hand. This is, we're in process. We're still gathering information. So if there is anything, please let us know. Other than that, I'll go back to the applicant. If there's anything else that you want to present tonight.
Nothing else to present. I guess I would just mention that, as we are wrapping up the DEP and Graves responses, just a reminder that, and I don't think we ever went through them in great detail, but there was nothing in there that, in my opinion, would change the scope of really anything we're doing. It's, some documentation, a couple minor revisions here and there. So we're hoping that by the next hearing in September, we will have, closed out those two items with DEP and Graves, and we can come back and present that to the commission and answer any, final questions that you may have. Just to give you a sense for, our timing, I guess ideally, we'd be moving towards, receiving an order as long as obviously we've satisfied all of your questions and documentation sometime over the next, hearing or two, if possible.
Yeah, I guess, and we do have a comment from the public. We'll get to them in just a moment. From my perspective, need to see a lot more about how you're going to control the site during construction. I just have way too much experience with a project of this size and understanding just the potential problems that you can have. So Jan, you want to let the person who's raised their hand?
Sure, I'm promoting Angela to speak.
All right, Angela, if you unmute, please just give your name and address and let us know if you have any comments or questions.
Thank you, Angela Achu, 30 Nelson Street, Grafton. Just want to also relay, I have concerns regarding site control. And I too have experience on construction sites where it takes a short period of time with a significant rainfall and seeing walls completely sink. And so I'm very concerned about the impact to the wetlands. I too am concerned about the truck wash, and I haven't seen any aspects of a green roof design. I haven't seen any indication other than the mechanical equipment being on top of the roof. So I am concerned about that. I don't look at that as clean water coming into the truck wash. I'm concerned about the backfilling of wetlands, and I understand there's the 3 vernal pools, and we've discussed this in the past, that one is on the Grafton side property. I'd like to know from the applicant if they are going to be moving forward with looking to have certification for the vernal pool. I understand it's not a requirement, but for the neighborhood, it would be something that we would appreciate knowing the stance on that if there is going to be movement toward having the certification process
So
complete. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. And I'll pass along a couple of questions to the applicant. I can tell you right off the bat, if there is a potential vernal pool, we will make it part of our order of conditions that it will need to be certified. That's pretty standard. That's something I would expect us to do. But I would like to ask the applicant about, have they considered green roofs or any other kind of alternatives with the roof system? Something, whether it's solar, green roofs, combination thereof, or anything else.
We did consider, I know the contractor and the owner were looking into solar, but that's not a standard, item that the tenant typically puts in their roof. And there is a significant cost premium to design a roof to support that weight and loading. So I believe it's still in the discussion phase, but at the moment we're not planning to put solar on the roof right away.
And as far as green roofs go,
It would be the same thing.
okay. Yeah, I mean, nowadays with the where solar is, a building of this size is a net plus on power generation, and I'm sorry, the payback is relatively small for the number of years. I mean, that's pretty easily demonstrated. So that would be curious to see if they've done that analysis, because typically it's not even 10 years to get a payback on your solar. But again, with the green roof, that just is an indication of weighing that as far as what else is going on in the site. So, all right, Angela, any other questions at this point? And please
Thank
feel
you.
free. Yep, yeah. Please feel free to have any other comments or questions. Ask again, or if you want to, please submit any kind of letters and so forth. Happy to
Thank you.
receive those for the record.
Thank you. My final question is regarding if there's been any consideration done regarding the maximum daily use of water that this site will be consuming.
That's a great question. As far as um, as far as our jurisdiction, um, it's interesting, obviously, if they were doing, let me ask one question real quick to the applicant. Is this going to be on either Shrewsbury or Grafton's town water system?
We'll be on Grafton's water system.
Okay, so you're not extracting water from a well or anything.
No, we'll be getting water from Grafton Water Department.
Yeah.
We've been
So-
coordinating with them as well.
Okay, so Angela, that might be a better question for the planning board, from a protection of the wetlands and so forth, and as far as stormwater goes, if they are on the town water system, they're not, it's not a well where they're taking out X hundred of thousands of gallons of water, so it wouldn't have an impact on the groundwater, so, which would be our purview, so.
Thank you. And the counterpart to that would also, just for the record, and I can bring this up with the planning board as well, it's also the sewer discharge. My understanding is that all sewer from this site will be going into Grafton, not into Shrewsbury. And so I'm just inquiring as well as what that load is anticipated to be per day.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I think that's something for the planning board. I'm sure the applicant has a good idea. Just curious, based on this type of location and just this type of distribution based on the parking lot sizes, I'm curious what the, number of employees are here, if for the applicant, if you have a range.
We can get you that information. I don't want to misspeak.
No, that's not a problem. And again, it's just, yeah, it's more just the vehicles in and out. For us, it's more about the potential contaminants and pollution. And as you mentioned, it's a LUPL. So those are the things that we would be concerned with. So, all right. All right, Leah,
Thank you.
anything else? Oh, you're welcome. Not seeing anyone else raise their hand. Leah, is there anything else for tonight? I know we still have some more information to get.
No, I don't have anything else for tonight.
Okay. Go back to the applicant and just see if you have anything and if you're looking to request the continuance.
Yeah, nothing further tonight, and yes, we would be looking to request a continuance to your next
All
hearing,
right.
please.
All right, thank you. So when is the next Jonathan Scott has raised his hand?
Hey, yes, good evening. One question, just as to the level of detail that the commission's asking for the control of erosion. We just want to make sure that we're fully prepared. We're very confident in our ability to be able to do this, but just want to make sure that we come back to the commission with the right amount of information. If you could elaborate on that for us, please.
I think one thing that would be extremely helpful, and I haven't looked at the plans in great detail, having a work sequence and understanding much better about how you're going to, sequence the work. What's the exposure? What do you have in place for just typical construction, but also how you're going to respond to? And it doesn't have to be, detailed because you don't know what the event would be to respond to, but the SQIP provides kind of an overview. Some of the things that we're looking for. Thank you for the question. A little more detail about the sequencing. You do have some site sequencing and things like that, but you've got. I don't even want to guess how many acres you have open at one time. There's got to be some thought to what you have on site to combat or respond to. You have a severe thunderstorm line coming through and you're going to get dumped with 3 inches of rain. You're not going to have time to go out and buy erosion control systems and things like that. They need to be on site. So I think one of the trickiest thing right now is, what do you design for? Because we have had such erratic, intense storms. So that's kind of a risk analysis on your part. From our part, is just understanding that you are prepared. And the more information that you can include in your erosion control makes it easier for us to to allow a waiver. Does that help, or does that kind of give you some direction?
Yes, ma'am. That is pretty helpful. I was looking for just mainly generalities, things of, we can berm in areas and make sure we're diverting water flow and seal up the job site. We can speak in a lot of large general control terms because this is something, that we're very used to, and our general contractors very used to opening up very large sites like this. So I just want to make sure if we come back and talk to you in general terms, like, we're going to have it firmed up around every wetland, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that, that's going to be enough to make a decision on the waiver.
Yeah. And I appreciate that sentiment, and I hope you actually follow through with it. Unfortunately, I have way too much experience where it doesn't happen. So that's just my personal experience over the last 30 years. So if you are forward looking and if you are prepared, you can handle it. We just have to be very careful that that's what's going to happen out there. That's all.
Understood.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah. So we have a request for continuance to our next hearing. Leah, when is our next hearing?
September 3rd.
We're going to be back to twice a month. Okay. No problem with that. So do I have a motion to continue the hearing to September 3rd?
I'll move to continue the hearing for Centennial Drive to September 3rd.
Thank you. Do I have a second? And it has to be you, Jonathan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll do available voting commissioners. So Jonathan.
Yes.
Travis.
Yes.
I am also a yes. And therefore the motion passes, and we will see you on September 3rd.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Yep. Bye. All right, Leah, what else do we have left to do? I think this is just a few things.
Yeah, you can take the discussion item next if you'd like.
Okay. Okay, discussion item for 45 Creeper Hill Road.
Yeah, and we do have someone online, if he would like to raise his hand, we can promote him to speak as well, but I can give a little background. So previously you guys looked at 45 Creeper Hill Road, was proposed for a single family house. We have since been approached, to gauge our interest in purchasing the property. They don't seem able to move forward with the construction of a house. I talked this through with the town administrator and we decided to pass on that opportunity. Because in order to get access to the site, that would allow us to have like a trailhead and a small parking lot, we would have to, according to the plans from the single family house, just to get that access, it would involve a lot of fill. It had retaining walls with guardrails on top, and it was going to fill wetland and BLSF, and then we would have to replicate wetland and BLSF. So we passed over that opportunity, but the Greater Worcester Land Trust is interested in purchasing it to improve it as access for the neighborhood. So they wouldn't be looking to, I believe they wouldn't be looking to get in and have as substantial an access point and parking lot, but Colin can speak better to that. But they're looking to basically get the neighborhood folks access to the adjacent parcel owned by the Nelson Park trustees. And they would like to know the commission's interest in holding a CR, should they become the owners. I informally said that I thought the commission would be receptive to that idea, but they are looking for a letter stating the intent to do so in order to secure their funding. So because it was going to need to be that level of a letter, I wanted the commission to actually decide if they're interested or not. I didn't want to just write something up.
Sure. Can you or Jan just bring up a quick GIS of where this is? Just looking to get context.
Sure.
Leah or Sandy, while that's being pulled up, because it's past 9 o'clock at night and I've been up since the wee hours of the morning. What's CR? Change request, change.
Oh,
conservation,
no, conservation restriction. So, so know how when, yeah, that one I knew, so I didn't absolutely ask if there's any questions. So yeah, so basically we would hold the restriction similar to like if we own something and then the land trust, like the Grafton Land Trust owns the CR. So I'm just curious where it is, and kind of what it abuts and so forth. And if someone's, yeah, okay.
I was just gonna say, I remember this one from talking about it, probably half a dozen times. But there's a bridge and then there was a driveway to a single family house that I think
Oh,
they had.
gotcha. Yep.
With the access at that driveway, there's a guardrail right on the corner there.
Yep.
I remember maybe Colin can illuminate more.
Yeah. So at the moment,
Oh, I'm sorry. If you could just give your name and address for the record.
Sure. Colin Novick, Greater Worcester Land Trust, 4 Ash Street, Worcester, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
So the parcel which is outlined in green is the parcel, 2.67 acres, has a 45 on it. Immediately to its east and southeast is that lot 35, which is the 17.6 acres of the Nelson Trust land, which is Article 97 land. But at the moment, it doesn't really have any access. We were looking at Creeper Hill Road as 2 different ways of looking at the property, one of which was sort of an overland access to be able to get people from Creeper Hill Road over to the Nelson Trust land. It also does afford the possibility of getting a canoe or kayak access. At the moment, it doesn't make sense to do a parking lot on the property, but it does make sense to have access from the road. One of the things that was interesting to us is that stretch of the Quinsigamond River has the Irish Dam to upstream, which is 33 on this map. Lower down from this map is I think it's the Hovey Dam, and this would create an access point on the north end. It is, because it's dammed, fairly, it has enough depth where even in low water, you still can actually have a recreational experience down there. So yeah, we were thinking contiguous open space, creating access, even if it's sort of more of a local neighborhood access rather than sort of creating a parking lot for people who are driving in from distances. But in order to get the funding from the state, we would need to be able to have a conservation restriction guaranteeing that the land stayed conservation land. And we were asking if the Grafton Concom would be willing to be the holder of the conservation restriction. And this would also give us a chance to work with the Nelson Trust to create a little bit more improvements, a little bit more of a formalized trail network on that 17.6 acres, which is adjacent.
All right, thank you for the summary on that. I mean, I certainly don't see a reason not to do the CR for Concom. I mean, Leah, is there any kind of reason why we wouldn't?
Not that I can think of.
It's
Let
also
me,
really nifty in that it has both banks of the Quinsigamond River through that stretch. So
right.
in terms of protecting, protecting edge habitat, protecting river habitat, it also is part of the biomap, a designated zone for wetland protection. So it even has a state status in terms of being something worthy of attention.
Right. Yeah, it's a planning tool. The biomaps are someday. Hopefully, there'll be more than that, but understood. So no, I mean, I'm just kind of doing the due diligence of asking the questions because I don't see a reason not. Let me go around to the commissioners and see if anyone has any.
No questions.
Emily?
No questions.
Yeah, so I mean, I certainly don't see it. I mean, holding a CR doesn't really expose us to a whole lot, other than making sure that it's actually stays open space. And it certainly does have some appeals as far as the Conservation Commission, with the river, with the protection of the banks and associated wetland resource areas. So, Leah, should we vote on this?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay. And what we're voting on is to basically have you prepare a letter that indicates that we have discussed this at the meeting pretty much, and that as a commission, we don't have any issues, and are happy to hold the CR, or the conservation restriction, for this property, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right. Thank you very much for bringing this to us. We don't get a lot of these type of requests, so it's nice to have a little bit of a change. So do I have a motion about approving the fact that the commission would be willing to be the to hold the conservation restriction?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
We'll do a roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, and it's a nice way to end the meeting. But so Colin, is there anything else that you need from us?
No, at the moment, that's it.
Okay. You can come back anytime. And you will be welcomed. So so thank you.
It's a good project. I look forward to it.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, Leah, what else is left here? Some certificates of compliances?
Yes.
Okay.
So there are two that I can speak to this evening. We are working through a third, but I'm not prepared to advise on that one.
Okay.
So they are for Highfields.
Okay.
And we do have a couple folks in attendees. If they want to raise their hand, they can get promoted so that they're able to speak as well, but I'll start the ball rolling here. So one of the orders was for 4 houses, 8, 10, 12, and 14 McGill Drive. 8 previously received a partial, so they're now looking to clear 10, 12, and 14 with a COC. So the differences from the approved plan to the as-built plan, limits of clearing were expanded in certain areas. Layouts of the structures on the lots did change slightly, and the corner of the house at 12 McGill does jut into the no disturb. One of our conditions required boulders and signage at the 20-foot no disturb zone. Those do not appear to have been installed, but whether they need to be or not kind of depends on the next few points, which is there was a significant isolated wetland shown on the approved plan between houses 10 and 12. It was an isolated wetland that it was a pretty big corridor through there. The applicant's wetland scientist visited that area today and found no evidence of it being a wetland now, and it didn't really appear to have been one historically either. There was also a plan between the approved plan and the as-built plan that still showed an isolated wetland, but smaller than on the approved plan, so it's kind of mysterious. If you guys remember, we did look at 10 McGill Drive maybe a year ago now when they wanted to put in a pool and relocate the no disturb signage on their lot. And we did approve them moving that signage because a replication area wasn't built near them, so the no disturb didn't come as close to them. So we do have some indication of where the line falls on 10, but because this was between 10 and 12, and I don't believe 12 was looked at as part of that process for 10.
Okay.
I would advise we have Art take a look at this spot between 10 and 12 before we figure out how we proceed.
Okay. Are there any other lots that Art should be looking at? I mean, the ones that are built that people are going to be looking for certificates of compliance that, I mean, it seems like everything, we're just having issues with things changing randomly out at this particular subdivision.
So that's probably a little more relevant in the next one we'll be talking about, which I can, do you want me to talk about that one
Yeah,
now?
sure. Go ahead.
Or-
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 164591 is the subdivision order as a whole, and that's one of the ones that we're often issuing partials for individual homeowners. Previously, the applicant had a request to get a partial COC on what they're calling phase 1, which is basically like the first loop road, not the second one. They're calling that phase 2. So previously they asked for a partial for phase 1 and we denied it. That was when we found the deficiency in the wetland replication. Then we did a friendly enforcement order for that deficiency. They came up with the plan to convert the old manure pit from the farm.
Yep.
To be their replication area, and that covered the square footage. They have constructed that, the plantings are in, Jan and I were out there. But it does need to survive 2 growing seasons.
Gotcha.
So what they're asking for, so that they can go through the planning board process and tee this up for fall town meeting, for potential road acceptance of phase 1. They're asking if the commission will be willing to release phase 1 through a partial COC. And then we would have, my idea was to have like a finding or an ongoing condition, or however we word it, that we're releasing phase 1 basically short of the replication areas.
Yep.
Surviving 2 growing seasons, and we will give that sign off when they come back for phase 2.
Gotcha.
The other piece that they have outstanding is the RDA we very recently did for the whole realignment. That's already in phase 2, so they aren't looking to close that area right now. And so I say that now to answer your question about what else should Art look at. I think we're on the right path because they're working on, they did the replication area, which meets the square footage.
Yep.
And we're also looking at that whole realignment. I don't have any other lots off the top of my head that come up specifically. We aren't looking at phase 2 in great detail right now, so I don't know. I could change my mind when we look at that.
Okay.
But we did do a walkthrough on phase 2, and I didn't flag any areas of concern at that time.
Okay. So, in kind of summary is the fact that, so 8's already been issued. 10, 12, and 14, they're looking. There is a question between 10 and 12. What about 14?
14 is pretty much okay. The limit of clearing on that lot did kind of expand a bit, but they also do have stormwater infrastructure out back that they had to put in. So that was part of the reason for the clearing.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't have any other issues with 14.
Okay. Is there any, so I get where they want to go for the phase 1 to get the subdivision road approved in town meeting. What's the schedule for that? And when do they need to submit for that?
So I think they are hinging on us issuing the phase 1 partial under 591 tonight for them to make it to the planning board's timeline.
Okay.
For the warrant that closes sometime in September, I believe.
Okay.
But I don't think us not being ready to issue 164508, I don't think that impacts that process, because that's for individual house lots. That doesn't have to do with like roadways and infrastructure.
Gotcha. That has to do with the 164591.
The 591 is the roadways and infrastructure. So
Right, so
that's
the
the
phase.
one. That's the crucial one for them to be able to go to town meeting.
All right. And what I heard you say is that for the phase 1, it's really that the replication area hasn't gone the 2 growing seasons, even though the replication area is changed from the original plans, is now in a different location, but they did it. It's installed. Has planting in it. It just hasn't gone the 2 seasons yet.
Correct.
Okay. So let me go around to the commission to see if anyone has any specific questions on this, and whether you have any specific, and so really what we're talking about tonight is that phase 1 and 591, because that's the time sensitive one, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, Travis, any kind of, and you're going to tell me the same thing. Travis, you can't vote on this, correct?
That's right. I'm recusing myself.
All right.
It's a
Thank
good
you.
thing because I wasn't listening, Leah.
Okay, that's all right. You don't have to. So Jonathan, do you have any kind of questions about this? We're going to try to get this done as soon as possible so you can go to bed.
I mean, we talk about this constantly, and I guess I agree with your kind of approach, Sandy. Is like, if there's anything we can do to help, if we're going out there once, and again, Leah, maybe you've answered this, that there's no other ones that we know of right now, but it seems like every few weeks or every month or every other month, it's something else for Highfields that's coming up from these different COCs. So I don't know if this is just the norm with something of that size, and that's just part of life. But yeah, can we just have him go out and look at multiple areas just to be sure, or like
What, I don't know what the process is there, but it looks like there's lots of things that have varied and changed, and I don't know if there's a lot of good tracking just because of how old it is, or because they weren't keeping us in the loop. It's really kind of hard to tell. Some of these things, limits of clearing expanded, layout of substructures, corner of 12 McGill goes into no disturb, but the no disturb may not be there. Like, it's hard to track all these things. So I guess my only comment is this sucks up a ton of the time, as I'm sure Leah's time and Jan's time as well. So is there a summit that needs to happen that's different than a typical meeting? Like, so we can resolve multiple issues? Or is this just the way it's gonna have to go until it's all done? I don't know who
I
that's
mean,
directed at, but yeah.
I'm kind of on the same page. That's why I asked the question is like, what can we do to get ahead of it and not just respond? I think at this point, it's really about phase one, in the fact that the replication area, even though it was moved, we approved it. It went through the process. They did it. It just hasn't met 2 growing seasons. So what we're being asked for tonight is really just to do a partial COC on phase one so they can get the road released, which is the next step of trying to get this off of not only our plate, but off of planning board too. So
That's the 164,591, the one at the very bottom of the report, Leah.
correct.
Correct.
So, and
Yeah,
I think,
guess
yeah,
it seems like it's reasonable if it helps move this process along, and that's how we typically would approach it, you know.
Emily, any questions or comments on this?
No questions, thank you.
So Leah, if we were to vote to approve the partial COC for phase one as described and to have a a finding or a condition that the replication area needs to go through 2 growing seasons to be confirmed that it has met the criteria of what was originally submitted to us, or what was submitted to us, not originally, but um, do you think a bond is necessary for that replication?
So if we do it this way, I don't believe so, because we still have leverage by holding
Because,
on
yep,
to closing out phase two later and making it part of phase two. I
okay,
kind of stuck that note there because originally the conversation was they wanted to go for the whole thing. And so
right,
then I was gonna say a bond would need to be our leverage.
gotcha. This way they're breaking it up and we still have a portion of it left that we
Right.
have. Yep, okay. Oh, I get that. Um, so that's really the key thing that we're trying to that's what the urgency is for this based on the town meeting.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have a problem with it. I wouldn't want to do the whole thing, but I think this is reasonable. So, Jonathan, any kind of issues with going ahead with just the phase one partial?
No, it seems fine to keep things moving. It seems like every time they come back, it's always, I guess it's always typical. Someone's trying to sell something or get something onto a,
Yep.
and it's now our rush or our thing to figure out, or I should say Leah's thing and Jan's thing to figure out and us to talk
Yeah.
about.
The only
I don't
good,
have moving
yeah,
forward.
yeah. The only good thing is they have done the replication area, so they're, that part is good. So, Emily, any kind of questions or any issues with going ahead with this one?
No, in agreement that we should figure out how to get these done and not show up every couple weeks.
Yes, I'm on board with that. So, Leah, we'll do a motion for the partial COC for the release of phase one for 164591.
Yes, please.
Okay. Do I have a motion on that?
Say so moved in relation to what you said before Leah said that, or do I have to repeat it?
No, I think you're absolutely fine. That works.
So moved with what Sandy just said.
Yeah. And
Second.
we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
go ahead, Travis. Say you're not going to vote.
I'm recusing myself.
Thank you. I am also a yes. The motion carries. And Leah, I also think that if we can get Art out there to look at 10 and 12 to get that moving, and if there's anything else that we can proactively look at to get ahead of, that would be great.
Got it.
I'm sure you're in the same mindset.
Yes.
Okay. Did I miss anything?
The only thing we have left is the last action item right above discussion items, which is reappointing our reps. And I know we still don't have everyone here this evening, but technically we've been doing this on a fiscal year system now. So since we hit July 1, technically none of our reps are official. So if you want to take any votes tonight, or
I mean, so far what it is CPC I've been doing, the open space, who's doing that? Or who was
Patrick.
doing that?
Patrick.
He's not here. And like Quinsigamond, we've kind of decided that that's kind of a ad hoc type of
Travis is
thing.
our floater. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we take care of CPC and like Quinsigamond, and then we can, unless someone wants to do the open space. I don't even know if they're holding meetings right now.
So I will just throw in a little comment here. I think, Travis, I think you were interested in open space previously. So just throwing it out there, if you wanted a change, we could then figure out Lake Quincy later. But it's
Absolutely.
totally up to you.
How many meetings is it a month? Do you know?
I
Leo,
think
off the
they're
top
at
of your head?
one. Oh, I think they're at one a month, and it could be even less frequent now that the big push was when they were rewriting the plan. They now have they now have rewritten the plan. So now it's more focused on like implementation of the plan and like oversight of that. So it could be even less than once a month. I'm not 100% sure the frequency, but it's not. I doubt it's as often as this.
I'm fine sticking as the floater for the Quinsigamond. If Patrick wants to stay on the open space, that's fine. If he doesn't, then I'd be up for taking that one on.
So you want to just do the CPC vote tonight then?
I want to just do the CPC vote, and then and if you could reach out to Patrick about that. So even if he
Okay.
doesn't show up there's a whole different discussion about attendance, but that's something we don't have to talk about tonight.
Okay.
So do I have a motion for basically reappointing me to CPC for the representative from conservation?
I'll move to appoint Sandra Brock as the CPC rep.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Travis,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
I am also a yes. And if anyone at some point is interested in being on CPC, I would not mind letting someone else have that opportunity. It's actually a pretty cool committee to be on, because you get to figure out how to spend a certain amount of money, and there's a lot of really good projects that are done out of CPC. It's actually a fun one to be on. I've been on it for several years, so if anyone has any interest in that in the future, please let me know. I'm happy to let someone else have that opportunity too. So, all right, Leo, that's I think it.
That's it. Can you imagine if we also had 5 new hearings tonight?
Oh my God. Yeah, I was gonna yeah, that would have been, let me tell you, even when I looked at what your report was, and I looked at just the density of each one of the things that we had. Yeah, okay. I spoke really fast tonight. So, all right. There is one thing left.
Motion to adjourn.
We got it. I heard one. I heard 2 people say that. So, Jan,
Travis
pick
can-
one. Yeah, and then yeah, Jonathan's got the second. So,
Second.
motion and second. Roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
I am also a big yes.